Hey guys, in today's video I would like to talk about how to have confidence and grow as an artist. Tip number 1 is using reference doesn't make you a novice. When we see our favorite artists sketching from imagination, I'm throwing up air quotes right now, I think a lot of us wonder why we can't achieve such good results when we do the same thing. Maybe we can't get the anatomy right, or maybe it's the lighting. No artist actually draws from imagination, but rather they're drawing from memory. Professional artists who have been drawing and studying the craft for decades, they've actually built up a visual library in their heads. Think of it like a Pinterest board, but in your mind. They don't need to scour the internet for a reference photo because they've already done it so many times. So many times actually that the reference photo is already in their mind, almost second nature to their hand. So never feel novice or lesser because you have to use a reference. One day after you've drawn the same face angle 100 times, and of course found your reference for each of them, you won't need to pull up a photo anymore because you'll just know how to do it because you've done it so many times already. Kind of like kicking a soccer ball or throwing a football. Tip number 2 is that you should compare yourself to your old self, not necessarily other artists. Don't get me wrong, it's important to have artists that you look up to and art that you wish you could draw like. These things give us inspiration, motivation, and drive. However, it can also give us stress and burnout when we find ourselves not being able to draw on their same level. Take me for example. Wallop and Sam Does Arts are huge inspirations for me. I'd love it if my art quality could be half as good as theirs. Sometimes I'll get spurts of motivation and sit down and try to draw a beautifully rendered and colored female like Wallop does, only I get halfway and quit out of frustration. This is because I'm trying to recreate a level of skill in just one night that took Wallop decades to craft. If you want to draw like your favorite artists, it takes time and baby steps. In the meantime, I'd recommend nailing the fundamentals first. Compare your current art to your old art, whether it be something you made 10 years ago or 2 months ago. If you're drawing regularly and trying to learn new things and implementing those into your art, you're bound to see growth. This type of small growth is the baby steps that will lead you to eventually being able to draw like the greats. One day, when you've taken 100 baby steps, you'll suddenly be able to run. One of my favorite things to tell people is that any kind of growth at the end of the day is growth. This can be in terms of a following or skill. If you gain 5 followers in a day, that is growth. You are further than you were yesterday, you know? No matter how small it may be, it is growth. If you never look back on your old pieces, you won't know how far you've come. Tip number 3 is that mistakes that you correct is how you grow. If you notice that something looks off about your art, the worst thing you can do is just shrug it off. Okay, I lied. The worst thing that you can do is call it your art style and then continue to make that mistake like you intended to make that mistake. An art style is deliberate and mistakes aren't. Maybe you can't get the pupils of an eye to look at the same place on the canvas. Maybe your fingers that you draw look like little limp hot dogs. Maybe your characters always look really stiff. And you can't ever figure out why all of these things are happening. You spent hours upon hours of work. So the least that you can do for yourself is try to fix the small things that make a huge, beautiful piece look a little wonky. Do this by Googling specific solutions. For example, why do my characters look so stiff? Look at similar poses and art pieces and relate it one-to-one back to your art. Is the eyes you drew really low compared to the reference? Take reference photos of yourself if you need to. And then in the next art piece that you draw, try to focus on making the things you struggle with look right. This loops back to number 1, where references don't make you weak, they only make you stronger. If you haven't built up your own memorized Pinterest board and your hand can just know what to do, and you're drawing without looking at a reference, chances are you're actually practicing the wrong angles over and over, drawing it incorrectly over and over, which is only hurting you in the long run, because now, when you should be having a memorized library of the correct things, you are memorizing the wrong things. So by finding mistakes in our art, and then with every new piece that we do, working to fix those mistakes, that is how you grow. I would focus on the most prevalent mistakes that you see and just tackle them one by one. So for example, if you can't draw lips correctly and you're noticing that all your lips look maybe really thin or out of proportion, or you can't get the correct emotion on them, your next piece of art maybe focus on drawing a character who's smiling and their lips are actually a very important part of the piece. And then Google a bunch of reference images, Google tutorials on how to draw lips, and do that until you can get a result that you're happy with. Tip number 4 is finding a community or a friend who will be honest with you. Critique is an artist's best friend, although sometimes it can hurt. You'll never improve if you have your best friends just praising your art, even though you yourself know something might be a little off that needs fixing. Don't be afraid to share your sketches, your work in progresses, and final art to your friends and ask them for an honest opinion. What can I fix? Does something look weird to you? Is my character portraying the correct emotion that I want them to? Then you can loop back to number 3 about fixing your mistakes and dive into finding a solution. After so many weeks or months or years, you'll find that your friends might not see nothing wrong with your art anymore. This, I think, is when confidence really starts to pick up. Tip number 5 is to draw what makes you happy and draw for yourself. Cliche, I know, but it's true. The quickest way to drain yourself of motivation is by forcing yourself to draw things you don't want to draw. You might be asking, why would I ever do that to myself? And the answer is quite simple. Drawing what's trending can gain you followers because you have to draw legs and arms and all the muscles to learn and study. The reasons go on and on. But my recommendation would be to find a way to do all of that while still loving what you produce. Perhaps you love drawing fantasy characters. Okay, then maybe there's a fantasy movie or show that's trending right now. You could do a fan art of one of the characters while still enjoying the process of drawing a magical character. If you need to practice anatomy, do some studies, but then implement what you've learned into a character of yours. Nothing feels better than figuring out how to finally properly draw something and then actually creating a piece you love because of it. Alright guys, so that was 5 tips on how to be more confident in your art and how to grow. These are just things that have helped me, and before I did all of this, I actually was pretty miserable. I would see really amazing art on Instagram or YouTube, and I would instantly think, why can't I draw like that? I want to draw like that. And I would sit down and I would try to recreate a beautiful pose or a beautiful piece of art, and it just wasn't working. I really didn't become happy with my art until I tried improving my art. Art isn't magic. One day you're not going to sit down and suddenly know how to draw the most beautiful eyes. You have to sit down and learn it and practice it, and then it becomes second nature. It all takes time, it all takes baby steps. At the end of the day, it's better to fix your mistakes now and practice them and try to get better than to keep making mistakes over and over and over. Because in a year's time, if you're focusing on fixing your mistakes, there will be a difference. Rather than just shrugging them off, you won't be fixing anything. And it's when we fix that we grow. Alright guys, thank you for watching. If you liked this video, please consider liking and subscribing. I would really appreciate it. If not, that's totally cool. We all have our own preferences. I will see you in the next video. Bye!